I love you, the rancher said. Then why didn't you touch me? The Apache girl whispered. The sun was climbing slowly over the horizon, casting golden light over the wide-open plains. The rancher, a tall man with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands, moved steadily across the field. His hat shaded his eyes, but it did little to hide the concentration on his face. He was checking the fences, making sure none of his cattle had wandered off. Life on the ranch was hard, but it was a life he knew well. Every day began before the sun and ended long after it had set. There was peace in the work, even if it was lonely at times. As he walked along the fence line, he noticed something unusual. A figure was moving in the distance, not on the paths he knew, but near the creek that ran along the edge of his land. It was a young woman, moving with careful steps, her long hair tied back in a loose braid. She wore simple clothing, but there was a grace to the way she carried herself, a quiet strength that made her presence noticeable even from far away. The rancher frowned. It was unusual to see anyone wandering near his property. He adjusted his hat and began walking toward her, his boots crunching on the dry grass. As he drew closer, he saw that she was trying to coax a young horse from the water. The animal was nervous, stamping its hooves and shaking its head, splashing the water around. The girl knelt and spoke softly, her voice low and calm, coaxing the horse without touching it. The rancher stopped a few steps away, watching quietly. He could see the determination in her eyes and the patience she had with the horse. There was something about her that made him pause. He had seen many people pass through the plains, but few had the same quiet confidence that she had. Her skin was tanned by the sun, her movements careful but fluid, and there was a spark in her eyes that told him she was not someone to be underestimated. "Need some help?" he called out, keeping his voice calm. He did not want to startle her or the horse. The girl looked up, her dark eyes meeting his. For a moment she did not answer, just studied him carefully. Then, with a slight nod, she said, "I think I can manage." Her voice was soft but carried a firmness that matched her posture. She did not sound frightened, only cautious, as if she had learned to judge people carefully before trusting them. The rancher smiled slightly. "I don't mean to intrude. I just didn't want that horse to get hurt." He stepped closer, holding his hands open to show he meant no harm. The horse shifted slightly, sensing his presence, but did not panic. She finally allowed him to approach, and together they guided the young horse back to the bank. It was careful work, requiring patience and steady hands. As they worked, they spoke quietly, sharing small words about the weather, the land, and the horse. There was a rhythm to their conversation, an unspoken understanding that grew with each word. "Do?" she said finally, when the horse was calm and safe. "I'm not used to asking for help, but I appreciate it." "You're welcome," he replied. There was a hint of admiration in his voice, though. He tried to keep it casual. "You know your way around animals." She smiled slightly, a soft curve of her lips. "I grew up learning animals can teach you many things, if you listen." The rancher nodded, feeling a surprising respect for her. She spoke simply, yet there was wisdom in her words. It reminded him of the older days on the ranch when his father had taught him to respect the land and the creatures on it. There was something comforting in that knowledge, a sense of shared understanding between them, even though they were strangers. They walked back toward the main path together, the horse following quietly. The rancher kept glancing at her, noticing details, the way her hands moved, the alertness in her eyes, and the faint smile that appeared whenever she spoke of something she cared about. She seemed so different from anyone he had met before, and yet familiar in a way he could not explain. "What brings you out here?" he asked, breaking a comfortable silence. "It's not common for people to wander through this part of the plains." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I'm traveling through. My people live nearby, but I wanted to see the land on my own. I wanted to see how it feels to walk freely." There was a hint of sadness in her voice, but it was tempered by pride. She walked with her head held high, even as she spoke of independence and solitude. He nodded slowly, understanding more than he expected. "It can be lonely out here," he said, "but it can also be peaceful if you know how to handle it." She glanced at him, a spark of curiosity in her eyes. "And you? Do you find peace here?" "Sometimes," he said with a small shrug. "It depends on the day. The work keeps me busy, but it also gives me purpose." He looked at her, noticing how attentive she was, as if she understood what he meant without needing more words. They reached a small clearing near a stream, the sun warming the grass around them. The rancher stopped and turned to her. "I should get back to the ranch soon. It's a long day ahead, and there's always more to do." She nodded, but there was a reluctance in her movement, a hesitation that surprised him. "I see," she said softly. "Thank you again for helping me with the horse." "You don't have to thank me," he said, smiling faintly. "It was nothing. But—" Her eyes met his, and for a moment there was silence. It was not an awkward silence, but a shared pause. A moment where two strangers felt something unspoken between them. The air seemed warmer, and the plains around them quieted as if giving space for this connection to grow. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's strange, meeting someone like you out here." He looked at her, curiosity and something deeper flickering in his chest. Strange good or strange bad? She hesitated, then allowed a small smile. "Good, I think." There was a pause, long enough for both to feel the weight of the moment. Neither moved closer, and yet the space between them felt charged, filled with possibility. The rancher felt an unfamiliar pull, a desire to know more about her, to understand her completely. She, in turn, felt a cautious fascination, wondering why this man, rugged and solitary, seemed so attentive and genuine. "I should go," she said after a moment, though there was no rush in her words. "It's not safe to stay in one place for too long." He nodded, though he wanted to ask her to stay, to share more of the land and its quiet moments. "If you ever need help again, you know where I am." She nodded again, and then she turned and walked toward the path leading away from the clearing. He watched her go, feeling a mixture of curiosity and concern. There was something about her that lingered in his mind, a sense of connection he could not explain. As the sun climbed higher, he turned back toward the ranch, feeling the familiar ache of solitude. Yet, for the first time in a long while, there was a thought of someone else in his mind, a spark that refused to fade even as the wind swept across the plains. The day went on as usual, the chores and tasks filling his hours, but the memory of her presence lingered. He found himself glancing at the horizon, imagining her walking along the paths, wondering if she was safe. There was a strange pull, a quiet longing he did not fully understand yet, but he knew it was important. And far down the path, the Apache girl paused once, looking back toward the rancher. A soft breeze lifted strands of her hair, and she felt a strange mix of curiosity and tension. The man had helped her, yes, but there was something else, something unspoken in his gaze, a depth she could not name. She whispered softly to herself, almost as if confessing to the wind. Who is he? The plains seemed to hold their breath, the quiet morning carrying the weight of two strangers' first meeting. Neither of them could know what the future held, but the moment had changed them both. The rancher returned to his work, yet every sound of the wind and every movement of the cattle reminded him of her presence. The Apache girl continued on her path, yet every glance at the landscape carried a thought of the man who had seen her, helped her, and left a mark on her heart that she could not yet define. The next morning the rancher woke before dawn, the cool air of the plains brushing against his face as he stepped out of his small wooden cabin. The smell of damp earth and fresh grass carried across the fields, and he could hear the low murmur of the cattle moving in the distance. His mind, however, was not on the work ahead. He thought of the girl he had helped yesterday, the Apache girl with sharp, intelligent eyes and a quiet strength. There was a memory of her soft smile, the way her fingers had moved with patience over the young horse, and the calm determination in her voice. He could not shake the feeling that there was something important about her, something that had stirred a part of him he had long ignored. Meanwhile, the Apache girl walked carefully along a narrow trail that cut through the plains. The land around her was wide and open, yet she moved with caution. She had been traveling for hours, enjoying the freedom of the land, but also alert to any dangers. Her thoughts drifted back to the rancher. There was something in the way he had helped her without asking for anything in return. His calm presence, his quiet respect, and his patient guidance with the horse had left an impression she could not forget. For the first time she realized that she wanted to see him again, not out of necessity, but out of curiosity and something more delicate, something she could not yet name. Later that day their paths crossed once more. A small storm had begun to gather over the plains, dark clouds rolling in like slow-moving mountains of gray. The rancher was checking the fence near the creek when he noticed her approaching from the other side. Her cloak was light, barely shielding her from the first drops of rain, but she moved steadily, unafraid of the storm. He called out to her, concerned. "It's coming fast. You should find shelter." She paused and smiled slightly, the kind of smile that made him catch his breath for just a moment. "I can handle a little rain," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was a glint of challenge in her eyes, as if daring him to say more. He walked toward her, his boots squelching in the wet grass. "It's more than a little rain. It can turn dangerous fast on the plains. You could slip or get lost." She hesitated. then nodded, sensing the sincerity in his words. "All right, I'll follow you." They made their way to a small grove of trees near the edge of the creek, where the branches offered some protection from the rain. The storm rumbled over the plains, wind gusting through the tall grass, but inside the grove there was a small pocket of calm. The rancher pulled a folded blanket from his bag and offered it to her. "Here, this will keep you a bit warmer until the rain stops." She took it with a quiet, "Thank you," her eyes meeting his for just a brief moment before looking away. There was a tension between them that neither of them addressed openly, a pull that made the air feel heavier. They did not speak for a while, listening to the storm and feeling the rhythm of the rain against the leaves. Eventually, the rancher broke the silence. "You travel alone often?" His tone was casual, but there was curiosity behind it. "I do," she replied simply. "It teaches you to be careful. You learn to notice small signs in the land, in the weather, in animals." He nodded, impressed. "I know that feeling." "Ooh, you have to read the land if you want to stay safe. It's a skill, and not many people have it these days." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, then she looked away toward the creek, watching the water swell from the rain. "It is not just about survival. It is about respect. The land, the animals, the people, they all deserve respect. You cannot force your way through life here." He felt a strange admiration for her words, her wisdom. She spoke simply, yet every word carried depth. There was a calm strength in her that made him realize she was not just a visitor to the plains. She belonged here in her own way. As the rain slowed, the rancher stood and offered her his hand. "The storm is letting up. We should get back to dry ground." She hesitated for just a second before taking his hand. The contact was brief, but it carried warmth and reassurance. As they walked together through the wet grass, he noticed the subtle way her fingers brushed against his, and he felt a flutter in his chest he had not felt in years. Over the next few hours, they worked together to secure the fences that the storm had loosened. The rancher showed her how to check the posts for weak points and how to fasten the wires properly. She listened carefully, her hands following his instructions, yet she added her own suggestions from what she had learned while traveling. The collaboration was effortless, a rhythm of shared effort that felt natural and comforting. During a break, they sat under the shade of a large oak tree, their shoulders almost touching. The rancher passed her a small piece of bread and jerky. "Here," he said, "you need some energy for the work ahead." She accepted it with a quiet thank you, but did not eat immediately. Instead, she looked at him, her eyes searching. "Why are you helping me so much?" "You barely know me." He shrugged, a small smile on his face. "I don't know. Maybe I see someone who needs help and I just do what I can. Or maybe I just like seeing someone who knows her way around the land as much as I do." Her lips curved into a soft smile, though she looked away quickly. "You are unusual for a rancher. Most would not care about someone else's safety or thoughts." "And you are unusual for a traveler," he said, meeting her gaze now. "You are careful, but fearless. You speak plainly, yet your words carry weight. You notice things most people overlook." She blushed slightly, but did not look down completely. "I have learned to survive. I have learned to observe. The land teaches you lessons if you are willing to listen." The rancher nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. For the first time, he felt that they were equals in this vast open land. Neither was above the other, yet both had strengths that complemented the other. Hours passed, and the storm cleared, leaving the plains washed and fresh. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the grass and water. The rancher and Apache girl paused at the edge of the field, watching the cattle move slowly back to their grazing spots. There was a brief, comfortable silence between them, the kind that comes when two people feel a growing connection but are unsure how to express it. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "I am glad we met again today." "Me too," he replied, his voice low. "I did not expect to see you again, but I am glad you are here." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink around them. The plains, the cattle, the wind, all faded, leaving only the quiet pull of something unspoken between them. Neither moved closer, yet the air felt thick with possibility. Finally she turned, gathering her cloak. "I should continue on my way before it gets dark. The plains are beautiful, but they can be dangerous at night." He nodded, though he felt a pang of disappointment. "If you need a place to rest, my cabin is not far. You are welcome any time." She smiled softly. The first time it seemed full of warmth rather than caution. "I will remember that. Thank you." She walked away slowly, her figure moving gracefully across the field, her head held high. The rancher watched her go, feeling an unfamiliar tug at his heart. He returned to his work, but his mind kept drifting back to her. Every sound of the wind, every movement of the cattle reminded him of her presence. As night fell, he sat on the porch of his cabin, the stars bright above the plains. The memory of her voice, her eyes, and her quiet strength filled his thoughts. For the first time in a long while, he felt anticipation for someone else, a sense of longing he could not fully explain. Far away, the Apache girl paused on a hill, looking back toward the ranch. A soft breeze lifted strands of her hair, and she felt a strange mix of curiosity, admiration, and caution. She had met many people in her travels, but none had made such an impression. She whispered softly to herself, almost as if sharing her thoughts with the wind. Who is he? And in that quiet moment, both of them knew that this was not the last time they would see each other. The plains had brought them together, and something deeper was beginning to grow. A bond built on respect, shared effort, and the unspoken pull of hearts slowly recognizing one another. The morning air was crisp and clear, carrying the faint scent of wet earth from yesterday's storm. The rancher rose early as usual, stretching his tired muscles as he stepped outside. The plains looked endless under the early sun, golden light reflecting off the dew-covered grass. Today he would check on the cattle and the fences again, but his mind was not fully on the work. He kept thinking of the Apache girl, wondering where she had gone after leaving the ranch yesterday. There was a quiet emptiness without her presence, and yet he also felt a strange sense of anticipation. Meanwhile, the Apache girl had set up a small camp near a gentle stream a few miles away. She moved with care, gathering water and arranging a small fire to dry her cloak. Even in her solitude, her mind kept returning to the rancher, the way he had offered help without expecting anything, the patience in his eyes and the steady calm in his voice. She felt an unfamiliar pull toward him, a curiosity mingled with caution. She had learned to trust only when she had no choice, yet here was someone who made her want to trust him willingly. As the sun rose higher, she decided to head back toward the ranch. There was a feeling she could not ignore, a sense that her path was somehow intertwined with his. She moved carefully, mindful of the terrain, her hands brushing lightly over the tall grass. Unbeknownst to her, the rancher was also moving toward the creek. He had seen signs in the land, broken branches, hoof prints, and the faint trace of a fire that suggested someone had passed this way, and though he did not know exactly who it was, a quiet instinct told him to follow. Their paths met once again near the creek, and this time the atmosphere was different. There was no storm to force them together. Instead, it was the open plains, the quiet wind, and the sense that neither of them wanted to part so soon. "Back so soon?" the rancher asked, a small smile on his face. She nodded, but her eyes studied him carefully. "I felt it was safe to return," she said. "And I wanted to see you again." His smile widened, though he tried to keep his expression calm. "I'm glad. You are welcome here any time." They walked together along the creek, the gentle sound of water filling the silence between them. Neither spoke immediately, but the connection was palpable. They understood each other in ways that words could not capture, a shared recognition of strength, independence, and an unspoken curiosity about the other's life. As they moved, a sudden noise broke the calm. A young calf had wandered into the shallow part of the creek and slipped on the wet stones. It struggled, unable to climb back onto solid ground, its small legs flailing. The rancher reacted quickly, moving to steady the calf and reach for a nearby branch to pull it out. The Apache girl stepped forward as well, her hands steady and confident. "Be careful," she warned, her voice low but urgent. Together they guided the calf back to safety, their movements synchronized without needing to speak. Once the calf was safe, they both stepped back, breathing heavily from the effort. The rancher looked at her with a mixture of respect and admiration. "You handled that well?" he said. "Most people would have panicked." She shrugged lightly, brushing her hair from her face. "I have learned to act quickly when life depends on it. Animals teach you patience and courage." He nodded, feeling a deeper appreciation for her strength. "I can see that. You are not just brave. You are thoughtful, too." There was a pause, and in that moment the rancher felt a wave of vulnerability he had not shown anyone in years. "I've lost people before," he admitted softly, almost to himself. "Friends, family. It changes you, makes it hard to trust. But with you, I feel, I don't know, like I can..." The Apache girl stopped walking, her dark eyes meeting his. She sensed the honesty in his words, the raw vulnerability he rarely displayed. "Trust is not easy," she said softly. "I know what it is to lose people, too. And it makes the heart cautious. But sometimes you have to take a risk, even when it is frightening." He looked at her, and for the first time he felt a connection that went beyond admiration or attraction. It was understanding, recognition, and the quiet hope that maybe they could rely on each other. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden commotion. From the edge of the field, a group of stray cattle had broken through a weak section of fence. The animals scattered, some heading toward the creek, others toward the open plains. Without hesitation, the rancher grabbed a rope and called out instructions. The Apache girl moved quickly beside him, her hands ready to help corral the animals. Together they worked tirelessly, guiding the cattle back into the correct area, repairing the fence as best they could in the moment. Their movements were coordinated, almost instinctual, and a silent understanding passed between them. Words were few, but their actions spoke volumes. By the time the sun began to set, the cattle were safe and the fence was temporarily fixed. They stood side by side, breathing heavily, covered in dust and sweat, yet feeling a quiet satisfaction. The rancher looked at the Apache girl, noting the determination and skill that had helped save the cattle. "I did not expect to manage that without you," he said, his voice tinged with both gratitude and admiration. She smiled faintly, though there was a softness in her eyes. "We worked well together. It was not just me." The rancher nodded, but his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary. There was a warmth between them now, an unspoken bond forged through shared effort, trust, and vulnerability. As the last light faded from the sky, they moved toward the small grove where they had taken shelter from the storm the day before. The Apache girl leaned against a tree, watching the horizon. "It is strange," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I have traveled alone for so long, but with you, I feel something different." The rancher stepped closer, careful not to crowd her space, yet close enough for her to sense his presence. "Different can be good," he said softly. "It can mean you are learning to trust, learning to feel." She turned to look at him, her expression a mixture of curiosity, caution, and something else, something tender. "And if I feel something, am I brave enough to admit it?" He smiled faintly, a gentle warmth in his eyes. "Sometimes bravery is simply acknowledging what is already in your heart." They stood in silence, the plains stretching endlessly before them. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of wildflowers and the distant creek. The rancher felt the pull of her presence, the quiet strength that had captivated him from the start. The Apache girl felt the same, a cautious hope blooming where fear had once dominated. As night fell, they lit a small fire together, sitting near it to warm themselves. The rancher offered her a blanket from his pack, and she accepted it with a nod. For a moment, their shoulders brushed, sending a subtle spark between them. Neither spoke of it directly, but the air seemed charged with possibility. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything today, for trusting me, for letting me help." He shook his head gently. "No, thank you. For showing me that strength can come in quiet ways, for reminding me why the plains are worth protecting." There was a pause, and for the first time both of them allowed themselves to simply sit, to share the quiet warmth of the fire, and to feel the growing connection. It was not about words or actions. It was about presence, trust, and the unspoken bond forming between two people who had learned to rely on each other. The Apache girl finally broke the silence. "Do you ever feel lonely, even when there is work to do and the land to care for?" The rancher looked at her, the flickering firelight reflecting in his eyes. "Yes," he admitted. "It is easy to feel alone out here. But meeting you, it makes me realize that maybe loneliness is only as strong as the walls we build around ourselves." She nodded, understanding more than he could imagine. Perhaps we were both learning to lower those walls, to let someone in without fear. They stayed near the fire long into the night, talking quietly about the land, the animals, their pasts, and the paths that had brought them to this place. Each word, each glance, and each subtle gesture deepened the connection that had begun with a simple act of help, and though neither of them crossed the line into physical intimacy, the emotional intimacy was undeniable. A trust had formed, delicate yet strong, built on shared effort, honesty, and the recognition of each other's vulnerabilities. As they finally settled under the stars, the Apache girl whispered softly to herself, "I did not expect this. To feel safe, to feel seen." The rancher, sitting nearby, felt a quiet hope in his chest. He did not yet understand everything he felt, but he knew that he wanted this connection to grow, to flourish, and to face the challenges of the plains together. And in that shared silence, under the endless sky, both of them realized that something profound had begun, a bond that would test their courage, their trust, and their hearts in the days to come. The next morning the plains were quiet, with the soft glow of sunlight spreading over the grass. The rancher was already up, checking the fence post near the edge of the creek. Even though the chores were the same as every day, his mind kept wandering to the Apache girl. Her presence had left a mark on him he could not ignore. He thought of her courage during the storm, the way she had helped with the calf, and the quiet strength she carried in every action. More than admiration, he felt something deeper, something he had not felt in a long time. Meanwhile, the Apache girl had returned to the grove near the creek. She moved with her usual careful steps, gathering water for her morning needs. Yet her thoughts kept drifting to the rancher. She remembered the look in his eyes yesterday, the way he had trusted her during the calf incident, and the quiet way he had admitted his loneliness. It was unsettling and exciting at the same time, making her heart beat faster than it had in a long while. She wondered why she felt this way, how a stranger could leave such an impression in so short a time. Their meeting that morning was almost accidental. The rancher had spotted her shadow moving near the creek and called out, "You're here early." She turned, a small smile on her face. "Yes. The land feels different in the morning. It is quieter, safer, and beautiful." He nodded, walking toward her. "It is, and it feels better when someone shares it." She glanced at him, noticing the subtle warmth in his voice. "Better?" she asked softly, curious. "Yes," he said, meeting her gaze. "Better because you are here." For a moment the words hung in the air between them, unspoken but heavy with meaning. She felt her cheeks warm and looked away, trying to hide the flutter in her heart. "You speak plainly," she said quietly, almost as if testing him. "I do," he replied. "I don't like hiding what I feel." There was a pause, and the Apache girl studied him carefully. There was honesty in his eyes, something she could trust, yet there was also hesitation, a vulnerability he rarely allowed others to see. She wondered if she could take the risk of letting herself feel too much, knowing that trust was fragile. Before either could speak further, a distant commotion drew their attention. A small group of travelers had entered the plains, moving too close to the ranch and the creek. The rancher frowned. "They shouldn't be here," he muttered. "It could be dangerous." The Apache girl stepped closer. "Do you want me to help?" she asked, her voice steady. He looked at her, then nodded. "Yes, we can handle it together." As they approached, the travelers noticed the rancher and began to question him, their voices raised with suspicion. The rancher spoke calmly, explaining that this land was private, and warning them not to cause trouble. The Apache girl stood close, ready to intervene if needed. Her presence gave him confidence, reminding him that they were stronger together. The travelers finally left, muttering under their breath, and the rancher exhaled slowly. "Thank you," he said, glancing at her. "You helped more than you know." She smiled faintly, a small warmth spreading through her chest. "We make a good team," she said simply. The rancher nodded, and for a moment silence fell. The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the scent of earth and distant wildflowers. He stepped closer to her, hesitant but determined. "I need to tell you something," he said softly. She looked up at him, curiosity and caution in her eyes. "What is it?" I care for you," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I have never felt this way before, and I don't want to hide it. I love you." Her eyes widened slightly, and she took a small step back, processing his words. She had felt the growing connection between them, the subtle pull of attraction and trust, but hearing him say it aloud brought a mix of emotions, joy, fear, and uncertainty. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I care for you too, more than I expected. But I am cautious. I have learned to guard my heart." He reached out, but did not touch her, giving her space. "I understand," he said. "I would never rush you or ask for something you are not ready to give. I just wanted you to know how I feel." She looked at him, studying his face. There was honesty, respect, and patience in every line of his expression. Slowly, she nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." They spent the next few hours working on the ranch together, repairing the sections of fence that the travelers had disturbed. Their movements were careful and coordinated, each action building trust and familiarity. The rancher noticed the subtle ways she observed the land, how she anticipated problems before they arose, and he felt a growing admiration for her intelligence and skill. As the day wore on, shadows grew long across the plains. They took a break near the creek, sitting side by side on a fallen log. The air was filled with the sound of water flowing and the distant call of birds. I worry sometimes, she said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. About trusting too quickly, about letting someone in, but you make it easier. He glanced at her, a gentle smile forming. I feel the same. I have been cautious for a long time, but you make me want to take the risk. Her eyes softened and she looked down at her hands. Then why didn't you touch me when we were alone yesterday? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her, surprised by the question, then met her gaze fully. Because I wanted your trust first, he said simply. Because I care for you, not just for a moment of closeness. I want you to choose it, not feel pressured. She was silent, absorbing his words. A warmth spread through her chest, a mix of relief and admiration. He respected her boundaries, and that made her feel safe, a feeling she had rarely allowed herself to experience. They continued to sit together as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the plains with orange and gold. Their shoulders brushed occasionally, sending subtle sparks between them, but neither acted impulsively. Instead, they allowed the moment to grow, letting trust and understanding build before physical closeness. As night fell, the rancher prepared a small fire, and they sat near it to warm themselves. The Apache girl wrapped herself in the blanket he had given her, feeling its comfort and the unspoken care it represented. I never expected to feel this way, she admitted quietly, staring into the fire. I thought I was meant to be alone, to rely only on myself. But you make me feel something different. He reached out, lightly brushing a strand of hair from her face, careful not to cross the line. That is all I want, he said softly, for you to feel safe, to know that you are valued and respected. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. I think I am ready to trust, she whispered. The rancher smiled, relief and happiness in his eyes. That is all I could ever ask for. They sat in quiet companionship, the fire crackling softly and the stars beginning to appear above the plains. It was not a rush of passion, but a slow, steady growth of trust, affection, and understanding. In that quiet night, they allowed themselves to feel the bond between them, knowing that it was strong enough to face the challenges ahead. And as they finally settled for the night, lying near the fire and listening to the sounds of the plains, both of them knew that their hearts had found something rare and precious, something worth protecting, nurturing, and exploring in the days to come. The morning light spilled across the plains, soft and warm, casting long shadows on the grass. The rancher rose early, as he always did, but today he did so with a sense of anticipation he had not felt in a long time. His thoughts were full of the Apache girl, the way she had trusted him yesterday, the quiet smile she had given, and the strength that shone in every gesture. He knew that today would be different. Today they would face not just the land and the chores, but the emotions that had been quietly growing between them. The Apache girl had also been awake for some time. She sat by the creek, her reflection in the water rippling with the movement of the current. Her mind replayed the past days, the storm, the calf, the confessions, and the quiet trust that had developed between her and the rancher. There was a calmness within her now, a feeling she had not allowed herself to experience before. She realized that she wanted to be near him, to share the day, the work, and perhaps even more of herself. When she approached the ranch, the rancher was already waiting, repairing a section of fence that had weakened over time. He looked up as she arrived, and a small, genuine smile spread across his face. "You're here early," he said, though there was warmth in his voice rather than surprise. "I wanted to see how you were," she replied softly, her eyes meeting his. There was a quiet intensity in her gaze that made his chest tighten. He set aside his tools and walked toward her. "I'm glad you came. There's a lot to do today, but maybe we can take our time." She nodded, understanding the meaning behind his words. There was work to be done, yes, but there was also space for them to grow closer, to explore the bond that had been building between them over the past days. Together they moved through the ranch, checking fences, guiding the cattle, and attending to small tasks that required care and attention. Each moment was filled with subtle communication, exchanging glances, offering hands to steady each other, and sharing quiet smiles when a task was completed successfully. The Apache girl noticed how naturally their movements synchronized, how their actions complemented each other without need for many words. It was as if the plains themselves had conspired to bring them together in harmony. At midday, they took a break near the grove where they had first sought shelter from the storm. The sun was high, but a gentle breeze cooled the air. They sat side by side on a fallen log, passing a small bundle of food between them. "I never imagined the plains could feel so alive," she said, breaking the silence. Not just the land, but everything. The work, the quiet, the connection between people. He looked at her, his expression softening. I know what you mean. I've spent most of my life here alone, but with you it feels complete. Not lonely anymore. She glanced at him, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. And I feel the same. I've traveled alone for so long, but with you there is trust. There is a sense that I can be myself. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of his feelings, his respect, and his desire for her. She did not pull away, though she let him guide her hand slightly closer to his chest. The warmth of his touch spread through her, a quiet assurance that she could trust him fully. I love you, he said again, his voice steady and sincere. Not just words, but in every way. I want to share this life with you if you will let me. Her eyes glistened with emotion, and she took a deep breath. I love you too, she whispered, her voice soft but clear. I have been afraid, but I trust you. I trust us. A smile spread across his face, relief and happiness shining in his eyes. He pulled her into a careful, respectful embrace, their hearts beating in quiet sync. It was not rushed, not impulsive. It was a union of trust, understanding, and shared emotion. They held each other in the gentle warmth of the sun, feeling the bond that had grown stronger with every shared moment, every crisis, and every word spoken honestly. The rest of the afternoon was spent in quiet companionship. They worked together to repair the remaining fences, moved the cattle to safer grazing areas, and even shared small tasks like gathering firewood and clearing debris from the stream. Each action strengthened their trust, each laugh and smile deepened their connection, and each glance reaffirmed the feelings they had carefully nurtured over the past days. As the sun began to set, the plains were bathed in golden light, the sky painted with hues of orange, pink, and purple. They walked together to a small hill overlooking the ranch, the wind gently lifting their hair. The Apache girl paused, taking in the view, and then looked at the rancher. This land, it feels like it belongs to both of us now, she said quietly. He nodded, a soft smile on his face. It does. And so do we. Not just the land, but this life we are building together. They stood there for a while, watching the sun sink behind the distant hills, feeling the quiet magic of the plains. The air was filled with the songs of birds returning to their nests, the soft rustle of grass, and the steady rhythm of their hearts. In that moment there was no fear, no hesitation, only the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious in each other. As night fell, they returned to the grove near the creek. A small fire was lit, casting a warm glow over their faces. The rancher handed her a blanket, and she wrapped it around herself, feeling the warmth not just of the fire, but of the man beside her. I never thought I could feel so safe, she said softly, resting her head against his shoulder. Not just from danger, but from life itself. He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. You are safe. With me, with this land, with everything we are building. And I promise you always will be. The stars began to appear above them, scattered across the sky like tiny lanterns. They sat quietly, letting the sounds of the plains fill the night. There was a sense of peace, a deep satisfaction that came from knowing that trust, respect, and love had grown steadily between them. They did not need to speak. Their hearts were already in conversation. Eventually, they lay down near the fire, side by side, watching the stars twinkle above. The rancher reached out, taking her hand once more, and she intertwined her fingers with his. There was no need for words. Everything they had shared over the past days was enough. They had faced storms, danger, and uncertainty together, and now they were united in trust and love. The Apache girl closed her eyes, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and the warmth of his hand holding hers. I never thought I could feel like this, she whispered. And I never thought I would find someone like you, he replied softly. Someone who teaches me patience, trust, and courage all at once. They lay in the quiet night, the fire casting soft shadows around them, the wind carrying the scent of grass and earth. It was a perfect moment of peace, a culmination of the growing connection, respect, and love that had brought them together. As the moon rose high above the plains, they finally allowed themselves to sleep, knowing that whatever challenges the land or life might bring, they would face them together. The bond between them was strong, built on trust, understanding, and the quiet courage to open their hearts. And so, under the endless sky, with the vast plains stretching in every direction, the rancher and the Apache girl found something rare and lasting, a love that was patient, respectful, and real. a love that had grown slowly through shared effort, crises, and honest words, a love that promised not only companionship but a life shared with trust, safety, and hope. The plains were silent now, but they were alive with the unspoken story of two hearts that had finally found each other. And in that silence, the future felt bright, full of possibilities, and filled with the quiet magic of a bond that could withstand any storm, any challenge, and any test of trust.